I never saw it coming. Not like this. I had just stepped into the house after a long day at work, the familiar scent of dinner still hanging in the air, when I saw the phone. Jamie's phone. Sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lit up like a neon sign. I wasn't planning on snooping, hell, I wasn't even thinking straight. But then it buzzed again. It was a message from an unfamiliar number, and for some reason, I couldn't look away. Curiosity, I guess. It got the best of me. I unlocked the phone. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. I'm counting the minutes. The words burned in my chest. My head started to spin. My stomach dropped like a weight in water. I didn't even need to see who it was. I knew. I'd been feeling something off for weeks, a crack in the foundation of our marriage I couldn't ignore. But this? This was confirmation. I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back as I grabbed my jacket. She wasn't home yet. She always worked late on Tuesdays, but tonight something was different. This time, I wasn't waiting to hear the usual tired excuse. No, tonight I was going to find out what was really going on. I'd installed the spy app on Jamie's phone a few weeks ago. It wasn't a proud moment, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt. Every time she'd left, I felt like I was losing her. The late nights, the girls' weekends, the secretive conversations. Now, I had proof. The app was tracing her location. The dot blinked on the map, just a few miles away. I didn't think twice. I couldn't. I threw the keys to the car on the counter and slammed the door behind me. I was moving on instinct, no clear plan, just a burning need for answers. As I drove, my mind was racing. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Why hadn't she told me? Did she even care? The app led me to a small, run-down neighborhood. The houses were dilapidated, the streets quiet, like something out of a bad movie. But I didn't care about the setting. I cared about her. I cared about the man she'd been with. I pulled up outside a nondescript house, a modest two-story. No lights on. Just silence. I could barely breathe. I checked my phone again. Yep, she was there. And that's when I saw the figure in the window. It was him. Her lover. The bastard. He was pacing around the living room, oblivious to the fact that I was staring right at him from the street. I could feel my chest tighten, my heart thudding in my ears. Anger mixed with a sinking feeling that made me sick to my stomach. I didn't knock. I didn't bother with the doorbell. I kicked it open. The sound echoed like thunder, and I rushed in. The living room was dim, but I didn't care. I didn't need to see everything clearly. I just needed to confront this. The man froze, his eyes locking with mine, a mix of confusion and recognition dawning on his face. He wasn't some smooth, confident player. He was just some guy, caught in the act. His hands shot up, like he was about to say something, but I wasn't interested in hearing whatever pathetic excuse he had. And there she was, Jamie, standing in the hallway, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Her face drained of color, eyes wide. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't wait for an explanation. So, this is where you've been? I spat, my voice sharp. This is where you've been hiding all your lies? She took a step back, still stunned, but I wasn't done. I tracked your damn phone. Do you think I'm stupid? You thought you could hide it from me forever? Just like that? Dave, it's not what you think, Jamie finally managed to say, her voice shaky but laced with that familiar manipulative tone. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just lonely. A mistake. The same damn excuse. I wanted to laugh, but I was too angry. How many times had she used that line? Lonely? I snapped, stepping closer, my fists clenched. You're telling me you've been screwing around with this guy because you were lonely? After everything we've been through? All the years? The man in the living room shifted, suddenly brave enough to open his mouth. You're wasting your time, man, he said, his voice weak. She's not your wife anymore. You're just too blind to see it. Blind. Those words hit like a slap. It was one thing for Jamie to cheat, but for this guy to rub it in my face? That was the last straw. Without thinking, I grabbed his arm, yanking him toward the door. You're not getting away with this. But just as I was about to throw him out, I heard sirens approaching. That's when everything took a turn. Jamie panicked, backing away. She started shouting, trying to stop me, but I didn't listen. I couldn't. The truth had already come crashing down, and now I was the one in control. I dragged her lover out to the front yard, ready to finish this, but the police arrived just in time. One of the officers saw me holding him by the collar and immediately drew his weapon. Drop him. I froze, realizing I wasn't just the angry husband anymore. I wasn't some guy throwing a fit. I was involved in something much bigger now. In that moment, something changed inside me. I wasn't just angry, I was done. Jamie's words, her lies, everything she'd said to me over the years, all fell away like dust in the wind. The officer cuffed her lover, but all I could focus on was Jamie, standing there with that blank look on her face. You're not going to get away with this, I said coldly. Jamie's eyes widened, a flicker of something, guilt? Fear, crossed her face. But I wasn't waiting for her to explain. This was it. The end. I turned my back to her and walked away. She didn't even try to stop me. It was over. I didn't look back as I walked to my car. The headlights from the police cars lit up the street, flashing in my rearview mirror as I pulled away. The adrenaline still pumped through my veins, but it was a different kind now. My body was stiff, my hands clenched tight on the wheel. But there was no relief. No satisfaction. Just emptiness. It wasn't until I got home that the reality hit me full force. The house felt cold, almost foreign. The silence was deafening. The smell of dinner still lingered in the air, but it wasn't the comforting scent I remembered. Now, it felt like a reminder of everything that had been shattered. I couldn't sleep. The hours dragged on, my mind racing in circles, trying to make sense of the mess Jamie had created. How long had she been lying to me? How long had she been seeing that guy? And why hadn't I noticed sooner? The questions clawed at me, but no answers came. By the time morning came, I was done. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to apologize, to give me some fabricated excuse. I'd had enough of her lies. I grabbed my phone, and without thinking, I sent her a message, "We need to talk." Within minutes, she replied, "Dave, I'm sorry. Please let me explain. I was stupid. You have to believe me." Stupid. That word again. My fingers hovered over the screen, but I didn't respond. I didn't want to hear it. The words were hollow now. The only thing I needed from her was the truth, but I knew better than to expect that from someone like Jamie. An hour later, she showed up at the house. She stood on the porch, her face red, her hair disheveled. She looked the same, but there was something different about her. Maybe it was the guilt hanging in the air like a cloud, or maybe it was the realization that I wasn't the same man she had left behind. The man who blindly trusted her. The man who couldn't see past her lies. I opened the door, and she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Dave," she began, her voice shaky. Stop, I cut her off. I didn't want to hear her story. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't need another tear-filled explanation. I just needed her to face the mess she'd made. "You're not going to manipulate me anymore, Jamie. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the real Jamie. Not the woman I thought I knew, but the one who would do anything to get what she wanted. "I'm not manipulating you," she said through clenched teeth. "I made a mistake. A huge one. But I'm still your wife." The word wife hung in the air, but it didn't feel the same anymore. She didn't feel like my wife. Not after what I'd seen. Not after everything I knew. "I don't care about your mistake," I said, my voice low and cold. "What I care about is how you've been lying to me. You've been sleeping with him, haven't you? All this time, I was the fool." She took a step forward, desperation in her eyes. "Please, Dave." I was confused. "You were always working, and I felt alone. He gave me attention. He made me feel wanted. I never wanted to hurt you." Hurt me? She had destroyed everything. The trust, the love, gone, all of it. And now she was trying to justify her actions? I could barely keep my composure. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to walk away, to be done with this. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "So, you're telling me you're sorry? That's it? That's your big explanation?" "I'm sorry for what I did," she said, her voice breaking. "But I still love you, Dave. I want to make it right." The words stung more than I expected. I had no doubt she thought she loved me, at least, at one point. But now, after everything? The betrayal? The lies? It felt like a lifetime ago that I had trusted her with everything. "You don't get to love me anymore, Jamie," I said, the words cutting through the air like a knife. "You don't get to walk back into my life and pretend like this is something we can fix. You made your choice. And it wasn't me." She looked at me with wide eyes, like she couldn't believe what I was saying. "You're just going to throw it all away? Everything we had?" "It's already gone," I replied. "You threw it away when you chose him." For a moment, she was silent. The weight of my words seemed to settle on her like a heavy blanket. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. "Not anymore. You don't even know what you're saying," she whispered. "You're angry, and I understand that. But you're going to regret this. You're going to regret letting me go." I shook my head, finally realizing what needed to be done. "No, Jamie. I'm not going to regret this. I'm going to move on. I'm going to find peace again. Without you." Her face contorted, a mix of shock and anger. But I didn't care anymore. I couldn't. I turned away from her and walked to the door. The sound of her voice calling my name, pleading for me to listen, faded as I stepped outside. The weight of the last few hours felt lighter, but there was still a hollow feeling in my chest. I was done with her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't need Jamie. Not anymore. I stepped outside, letting the cold air hit my face. It felt almost cleansing, like I was shedding the last remnants of the past. The truth was, I didn't feel the anger I thought I would. The anger had burned through me already, leaving behind an unsettling calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her to say the right thing, to apologize, to beg. It was over. But as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, expecting another desperate message from Jamie. But it wasn't her. It was him. The man. The one who had been with her. His name popped up on the screen, Bryce. I almost laughed. So this was his move. This was the kind of man who felt bold enough to text me now that he'd gotten what he wanted. I stared at the screen, feeling a new surge of disgust, and then I opened the message. "You don't know who you're messing with, man. You don't scare me. I think you should back off." I read the words again. Something in my brain snapped, not because I was scared, but because of how goddamn audacious this guy was. Who the hell did he think he was, texting me like this? I typed back without thinking, my fingers moving faster than my brain. You don't get to scare me. You don't know who you're dealing with, either. If you ever contact me again, I'll make sure you regret it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a boast. It was a promise. I had no intention of letting him pull any more stunts, no matter how cocky he sounded. But then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jamie. Dave, please listen to me. I'll do anything. Please, just don't make me regret this. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to fight the urge to respond. She was still trying to manipulate me, still pretending like she could fix everything with a few words. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't need her to apologize anymore. The last thread of our marriage had been burned to the ground, and no amount of begging was going to change that. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat of the car and got in, slamming the door behind me. The engine roared to life, and I sped down the road without a destination in mind, just needing to be away from everything that had become my life. But as I drove, the reality of what had happened, what I had discovered, started to settle in. My hands gripped the wheel tighter as I thought about Jamie's betrayal. About how I'd spent years loving her, trusting her, and how easily she had destroyed it all for a fleeting moment of excitement. For him. I couldn't shake the image of them together. The way she had looked at me, that flash of panic in her eyes when I barged into that house, like she didn't even think I'd find out. But the worst part? It wasn't the affair. It wasn't the fact that she'd cheated. No, the worst part was the realization that she thought she could get away with it. That she could lie to me for so long, and I wouldn't find out. That she thought I was weak enough to just let it slide. I pulled into an empty parking lot and turned off the car. The silence inside the vehicle felt suffocating. It wasn't just the affair that was eating at me. It was the years we'd spent together, all the moments I thought were real, all the conversations I thought mattered, and now it all felt like a joke. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through the messages, trying to ignore the fact that Jamie was still blowing up my inbox. You don't understand. Please, don't leave me. I didn't even read the rest. It didn't matter anymore. She was lying. She was always lying. But then something caught my eye. A name. A new message, this time from a number I didn't recognize. It was a text, but it wasn't from Bryce. We need to talk. It's about Jamie. I stared at the message, confused. Who the hell was this? I didn't recognize the number, but there was something about the tone that made my stomach twist. It wasn't threatening. It was urgent. I hesitated for a second before responding. Who is this? The reply came quickly. I can't explain over text, but I have information about Jamie and Bryce. It's not what you think. If you want to know the truth, meet me. I froze. This was new. This wasn't just some random person. Whoever this was, they knew something. Something I didn't know. I didn't trust it, but my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to know the truth. Where? The response came almost instantly. I'll send you the address. Don't bring anyone. I stared at the screen, weighing my options. It could be a trap. It could be some sick game. But there was only one way to find out. I wasn't going to let Jamie walk away from this without knowing every dirty detail. I gripped the steering wheel again, making my decision. I was done being the fool. If someone knew more about what she was up to, I wasn't going to back down. The address popped up on my phone. It was in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, in a part of town that felt off, like the kind of place where people went to hide things. I didn't hesitate. I started the car and drove, wondering what the hell I was about to walk into. I wasn't just walking into a meeting. I was walking into the final chapter of a story I never thought would end like this. And I was ready for whatever came next. The drive was longer than I expected. The streets grew darker and less familiar as I made my way into the sketchier part of town. The area was quiet, too quiet, and the buildings looked abandoned, like the sort of place you only went to when you were desperate or hiding from something. I kept my foot on the gas, not wanting to let my nerves get the best of me. My phone buzzed again. The same number. "I'm here. Come around the back." I didn't stop to think. I just followed the directions, making a sharp turn down a narrow alley behind a rundown building. The only light came from the faint glow of a single street lamp at the far end, and as I parked, I could see the outline of a figure standing by the back door, waiting. I got out of the car and walked toward the person, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't scared, at least, I didn't want to admit it, but something about this whole situation felt off. Everything about it screamed wrong. The person didn't move as I approached. I couldn't make out much of their face in the dim light, but they had their back to me, their hands shoved deep into the pockets of a worn jacket. As I got closer, they finally turned, and I froze. It wasn't a man like I expected. It was a woman. She wasn't who I thought she'd be, either. She wasn't some shady figure I could easily dismiss. She was in her mid-30s, with short, dark hair and a look in her eyes that I couldn't place, tired, guarded, but also knowing. Something about her made me uneasy. "You Dave?" she asked, her voice low but firm. I nodded, trying to stay calm, but I felt the tension in my body, the adrenaline still racing through my veins. "Yeah, I'm him." "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the one who's going to tell you the truth about your wife," she said, her eyes scanning the alley before she stepped aside, motioning for me to follow her. "But you need to keep your head cool. This isn't going to be easy to hear." I didn't move. I wasn't sure if I should trust her or just walk away. But something told me that I needed to hear whatever it was she had to say, so I stepped forward, cautiously. She led me to a small, dingy room at the back of the building. The place was a mess, furniture covered in dust, empty beer cans scattered on the floor. It was clear this wasn't some place you came to for business meetings. But when she shut the door behind us and locked it, I knew something big was about to come. She motioned for me to sit down, and I did, still keeping my distance. She didn't seem threatening, but I wasn't taking any chances. "You're probably wondering who I am," she said, sitting across from me, eyes studying me like she was sizing me up. "I'm a friend of Bryce's. I'm also someone who knows what's really been going on with your wife." "Bryce's friend?" I repeated, not sure I understood. "What the hell do you know about Jamie?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair before leaning back in her chair. "Jamie isn't the woman you think she is, Dave. She's been lying to you for a long time, not just about the affair, but about a whole lot more." "And Bryce? He's not who you think he is, either." I was getting frustrated. "Just spit it out," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "What the hell is going on? Why are you even telling me this?" She looked at me with sympathy in her eyes. "Because I can't stand to watch you be made a fool of anymore. You're not the only one Jamie's been deceiving. And it's about time you knew the full truth." I leaned forward, my fists clenched. "I'm listening. Tell me." She glanced around, like she was making sure no one else was listening. "A few months ago, Jamie started seeing Bryce. But it wasn't just some casual fling. They've been working together on something big. She's been feeding him information about your job, about your finances, even about things that you thought were private. All of it was planned. She's been using you, Dave. You weren't just a husband. You were a tool to her." I sat back, the words crashing into me like a freight train. My mind was spinning. What do you mean, using me? She's been feeding Bryce inside information to help him get ahead in his business, she continued, her voice dropping. She didn't just cheat on you. She sold you out. And it's been going on for months. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to stand up, to walk away, but I couldn't. I needed answers. Why the hell are you telling me this? What do you get out of it? I'm telling you because I hate what Jamie's become, she said, her voice trembling. She's always been manipulative, but this is next level. I don't know what Bryce promised her, but she's been using him just as much as he's been using her. But he's a dangerous man, Dave. You don't want to get in his way. I shook my head, trying to process it all. My wife, my entire life, had been a lie. And now, the man she'd been seeing wasn't just some affair partner, he was a predator, using her, using me. I don't care what she did or why she did it, I said, the anger returning, sharper this time. She crossed a line. And now, she's going to pay. I stood up, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about a betrayal anymore. This was about revenge. About taking back what was mine. The woman reached out, grabbing my arm. Don't do anything rash, Dave, she warned. I'm telling you, Bryce is dangerous. You can't just walk in there and confront him. But I was already out the door. There was no turning back now. I didn't care what Bryce had planned, what Jamie thought she could control. I was going to put an end to this, once and for all. This wasn't just about saving myself anymore. It was about taking back control. I didn't care about the warnings. I didn't care about the danger. My mind was set, and there was no going back. The more I thought about it, the more the anger bubbled up. Jamie had used me, screwed with everything I thought I knew, made a fool of me, all while working behind my back with that guy, Bryce. But it wasn't just the affair anymore. No, it was the betrayal of everything we had, everything I believed in. I couldn't let that go without doing something about it. I got in my car and slammed the door, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't even know where I was going, but I was heading back toward Bryce's area. I couldn't stand the idea of him walking away from this unscathed. I needed to confront him, to make him realize that I wasn't going to let him toy with my life. And if it came down to it, I'd make sure he knew exactly what it felt like to lose control. I didn't even realize how fast I was driving until I found myself pulling up to the street where Jamie and Bryce had been meeting. The place was quiet now, a far cry from the hustle and bustle it had been earlier in the day. The streetlights flickered, and I parked a little farther down, keeping the car out of sight. My heart raced as I cut the engine, the weight of the moment settling over me like a heavy blanket. I stepped out and moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as I approached the building. I wasn't sure if Jamie was there, but I had to assume she was. This was her world now, and I was just the sucker who didn't see it until it was too late. I approached the back alley, the same one I had walked down earlier, and as I neared the door, I saw a shadow moving inside the window. I froze. Someone was there. It could have been Jamie or Bryce, or maybe both. I waited, my pulse hammering in my ears. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped out. It was Bryce. He was walking toward the alley, hands in his pockets, as cocky as ever. I didn't think. I moved, stepping forward and grabbing him by the shoulder, spinning him around to face me. His eyes widened in surprise, but that look quickly turned to one of recognition, then to a cocky smirk. "Well, well, well," he said, his voice oozing with arrogance. The husband finally decided to show up. I shoved him hard against the wall, my chest heaving with anger. "You think you can just mess with my life and walk away, huh?" He laughed, the sound deep and mocking. "You really think you've got some sort of control here, Dave? You're not in charge. You never were. But you can keep playing the hero if it makes you feel better." I grabbed his shirt, lifting him off his feet, my anger rising to a boiling point. "This isn't some game, Bryce," I growled. "This is my life. And I'm done letting you two destroy it." His smirk faltered just for a second, but then he regained his composure. "You think you're the only one hurt here? You think Jamie hasn't used me too? Don't kid yourself, Dave. You weren't the only one being played." The words hit me like a slap. I froze, staring at him. For a moment, all the anger drained out of me, replaced with confusion. "What do you mean?" She was using me," Bryce interrupted, pushing against my grip. "Just like she was using you. You really think I'm the villain here? She's the one who got me into all this. I was just playing the game too, just like you." I was so thrown off I didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the Bryce I expected, the cocky, smug guy who had been screwing my wife. No, this was something else. A man who had been just as manipulated as I had been. "You think I wanted any of this? You think I wanted to be in her web? Hell, she's the one pulling the strings. She's the one who's been running this whole thing," Bryce said, his voice dropping into something almost sad. "I got caught up in it. We all did." The silence between us stretched out, thick with tension. My mind was racing. Could it be true? Was Jamie really playing both of us? Had she been using Bryce to get something, money, power, whatever she needed, and I was too blinded by my own rage to see it? Before I could respond, the back door of the building slammed open and Jamie stepped out. Her eyes landed on me, and her face twisted in a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Dave," she started, but I cut her off before she could say anything else. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice rough, the betrayal echoing in every word. "Were you using both of us?" Jamie didn't answer at first. She stood there, her eyes darting between Bryce and me. Then she shrugged, as if it was nothing. "What did you expect, Dave? You were always too busy with work to pay attention. I had needs. Bryce understood me in ways you never could. And the rest, it was just business." "Business?" I repeated, the word burning in my throat. "Is that what this was? Some kind of business transaction to you?" She crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "You wouldn't understand. You never did. I gave you everything you wanted, didn't I? And in return, you were too busy to see anything else." My mind was reeling. I could barely comprehend what I was hearing. Everything I thought I knew about Jamie, about my marriage, was a lie. She had been using me all along, just like Bryce had said. She'd treated it like a transaction, an arrangement where I was the fool. I shook my head, feeling sick. "I don't care about your excuses anymore. It's over, Jamie. I'm done." She opened her mouth as if to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked away, leaving her and Bryce standing there, two players in a game that had finally burned itself to the ground. It was done. There was no going back. I was walking away from the woman I thought I knew, and I wasn't looking back. As I got in my car and drove away, the weight in my chest lightened, but the sting of betrayal still lingered. It wasn't just the affair. It was the realization that I had been living a lie for years. But now, at least, I had the truth. And with it, I could finally move on. I drove aimlessly, not really caring where I went, just needing to get away from the scene that had unfolded behind me. The headlights illuminated the empty streets, and the familiar hum of the car was the only sound in the silence. I didn't even know where I was heading, my mind was too fogged up with the lies and revelations that had just shattered everything I thought I knew. The truth was like acid, burning through the foundation of my life, leaving me hollow, but strangely, free. But even with that newfound freedom, I couldn't shake the thought of Jamie. I didn't know how to process everything she had said, or, more accurately, everything she hadn't said. It was like she had been playing a game this whole time, and I had been the last to know the rules. The thought of her casual dismissal of what we had, of the way she treated me like just another pawn, sent a wave of fury through me. How could I have been so blind? I turned a corner and found myself near a bar I used to go to, a place where I'd go after long days of work, a place I hadn't been to in years. Without thinking, I pulled into the lot and parked. I didn't even care that it was nearly empty at this time of night. I needed a drink, and I needed it fast. The bar was dimly lit, the familiar smell of stale beer and old wood filling the air. I walked up to the counter and took a seat, ignoring the empty stools next to me. The bartender, a guy named Eric who'd been there forever, raised an eyebrow when he saw me. "Rough night?" he asked, setting down a drink in front of me without waiting for an answer. "Yeah. Something like that," I muttered, grabbing the glass. Eric didn't press. He just nodded and walked away. It wasn't like I needed sympathy. I didn't want to explain my life to some stranger behind a bar. I just needed to drown everything out. So, I did. The whiskey burned going down, and for a while, I just focused on that sensation, the fire in my throat. It was better than thinking about Jamie. It was better than thinking about Bryce. Hell, it was better than thinking about how I had let my life fall apart in front of my eyes. As I took another sip, the door to the bar swung open, and I didn't even look up. But then I heard the familiar sound of heels clicking against the floor, and something in me stiffened. I knew that walk. Knew it all too well. I turned around slowly, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. It was her. Jamie stood in the doorway, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. For a second, she hesitated, then she walked toward me, her heels tapping rhythmically against the floor. I didn't move. I didn't even say anything. She stood in front of me, a mixture of uncertainty and defiance in her eyes. She was dressed in a sleek black dress, looking polished and pristine, nothing like the woman I had just seen a few hours ago, the one who had tried to justify everything with her lies. "Dave," she said softly, as if I'd somehow forgotten who she was. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Funny," I replied, my voice colder than I meant. "I didn't expect to see you, either." She winced but didn't back away. "I know what you must be thinking, and I..." "Save it," I cut her off, my patience gone. "I don't want to hear it. Not tonight." She bit her lip, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. It wasn't the kind of guilt I was used to, the kind where she pretended everything was fine. No, this was something different. This was real, raw, something even she couldn't hide. I just needed to see you," she said, almost pleading. "To explain. To fix things." I laughed bitterly, leaning back in my seat. "Fix things? After everything you've done, you think you can just walk in here and make it all go away?" She looked away, as though my words stung. "No, I don't expect that. I know I can't fix it. I don't even know if I can fix myself. But I don't want to lose you, Dave." The words hung in the air, almost as if they didn't belong to her, like she was reading a script, something she knew she was supposed to say but didn't fully believe. "You already lost me, Jamie," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You don't get to come back from this. You betrayed me. You used me. And all for what? A few months of whatever it is you were getting from Bryce?" She flinched at the name, her face tightening. But she didn't look away. "It wasn't just about him," she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. "It was about me feeling like I was invisible. I don't know when it happened, but I started to feel like I didn't matter. I needed someone to see me, Dave. I needed someone to make me feel wanted." I stared at her, trying to process the words, but it didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. It didn't matter how she felt. It didn't matter that she was sitting here, looking vulnerable, because she'd done this to herself. She had broken everything we had, and now she wanted to pick up the pieces, like it was that easy. You made your choice, I said, standing up. You had your fun. You thought you could play with my life, play with us. But it's over. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away, not wanting to feel her touch anymore. I couldn't let myself be pulled back into her web. Please, don't go, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. I need you. No, I said, my voice firm, my decision final. You don't need me. You need to fix whatever mess you've made of your life. I'm done trying to fix things that were never broken to begin with. You did this, Jamie. Not me. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the bar, leaving her standing there, the woman who had once been my everything, now just another stranger in the distance. As I stepped into the night, the cold air hitting my face, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had made my choice, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it was the right one. The world was wide open now. It was time to rebuild. Time to move on. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't feel the need to look back as I stepped into the cold night air. Jamie's voice, pleading and desperate, echoed behind me, but it barely registered. I had shut the door on her and everything we were. The world felt both heavier and lighter at the same time, as if the weight of years spent in a lie had been lifted from my shoulders, but the empty space it left behind was vast. The streets were quiet, the hum of distant traffic the only sound accompanying me as I walked away from the bar. My mind raced, processing everything. It wasn't just about Jamie anymore. It was about me, my life, my future. She had used me, broken me down bit by bit, and all along, I had been too blind or too stupid to see it. Now, I was left with nothing but the aftermath of her actions, the wreckage of a life I thought was built on trust and love. I found myself wandering, not sure where I was going. There was no destination in mind. Just the need to keep moving. Eventually, my feet led me to a park, the familiar winding paths and the quiet solitude it offered inviting me in. The benches were empty, as they often were this late at night, and I took a seat under a street lamp, staring at the dark expanse before me. For a while, I didn't think about anything. The stillness of the night was all-consuming, and it gave me the space I hadn't realized I needed. Then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting to see a message from Jamie. But when I unlocked the screen, it wasn't her name that flashed up, it was an unknown number. I frowned and answered without hesitation. Hello? There was a brief pause before the voice on the other end spoke. Dave? It's Bryce. My stomach dropped, a cold rush of adrenaline flooding through me. What do you want? I growled, my fists clenching at the sound of his name. I didn't need to hear anything more from him. Nothing he could say would change what had happened. I know what you're thinking, he said, his tone steady but clipped. But hear me out, okay? I almost hung up right then, but something in his voice stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that he was the last person I expected to hear from tonight, or maybe it was because, despite everything, I couldn't quite let go of the nagging feeling that there was more to this story than I knew. I sighed. You've got 5 minutes. Fair enough, he replied, his voice quieter now. I know what Jamie's done to you. I get it. But I need to explain something. I'm not the guy you think I am. I let out a bitter laugh. You're not the guy I think you are. You've been sleeping with my wife behind my back, and now you want to play the victim? Let me finish, Bryce shot back, his tone suddenly sharper. I'm not trying to make excuses for what happened. I'm just telling you that Jamie's been playing both of us. She's been stringing me along just as much as she's been stringing you along. She's using us both to get something bigger than either of us. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. What the hell are you talking about? I asked, my mind racing. You think she's just having an affair for fun? Bryce's voice dropped lower. She's been planning something. Something bigger than either of us can understand right now. And I think it's time you knew the truth. I was silent for a long moment, trying to process what he was saying. He sounded serious, hell, he even sounded scared. But there was no way I was just going to take his word for it. After everything Jamie had put me through, after the betrayal, the lies, the deceit, I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Why the hell would I trust you? I finally asked, my voice low and steady. You're as much a part of the mess as she is. I get it, Bryce responded. You don't have to trust me. But you need to hear this. Jamie, she's got a plan. She's been working with someone you don't know. Someone I didn't even know about until recently. And now, she's going to make a move. And it's going to change everything. My heart pounded in my chest. Who is it? Who's she working with? That's what I don't know, Bryce said, his voice edged with frustration. But I know she's not playing us for no reason. This isn't just about us, Dave. This is about something bigger. Something dangerous. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. What the hell had Jamie gotten herself into? I thought it was just an affair. Just a selfish act of betrayal, but now it seemed like there was more at play here. A part of me wanted to walk away from this, forget everything Bryce was saying and just try to salvage what little was left of my life. But the other part of me, the part that still cared for Jamie, the part that was still reeling from everything she had done, that part of me wanted answers. What's she planning? I asked, my voice tight. Bryce was quiet for a moment, then sighed. I don't know yet. But if you want to stop her, if you want to stop whatever it is she's doing, you need to act fast. I don't know how much time we have. I rubbed my forehead, the weight of everything suddenly too much to bear. For the first time in days, my thoughts weren't filled with anger or betrayal, but fear. She's not just messing around, is she? I asked quietly, almost to myself. No, Bryce answered, his voice grim. She's not. And if we don't figure this out, there's no telling what will happen next. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye, the sound of the dial tone echoing in my ear. This wasn't over. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, it was just the beginning. And now, I was in a game I didn't understand, with a woman who had completely turned my life upside down. The pieces were falling into place, but there were too many unknowns. Too many risks. And as I sat there, the night pressing in on me, I knew I had to make a choice. Either I went after the truth or let Jamie's twisted web swallow me whole. But no matter what, I couldn't let her win. I stood there in the dark, my mind spinning. The sudden revelation that Jamie wasn't just a woman having an affair, but someone playing a far more dangerous game, hit me harder than anything else. It was one thing to be betrayed, it was another to find out that the woman I loved was part of something much bigger, something I didn't understand. My breath was shallow, my pulse racing. Everything had changed. I couldn't go back to the life I had just hours ago, the life where I thought I had the upper hand in my marriage. I had been foolish, letting the lies of a woman I thought I knew drag me through the mud. But now, with Bryce's cryptic warning in my ear, I had to act, fast. The cool night air bit at my skin as I climbed into my car. I didn't have a plan. There was no roadmap for what I was about to do. I didn't know how to stop whatever Jamie was up to, or even if I could. All I knew was that I couldn't let her, or whoever she was working with, win. The drive felt endless. My mind flickered between anger and disbelief, flashes of Jamie's face, her eyes, her voice, all running through my head like a film I couldn't turn off. But nothing compared to the way I felt when I finally reached our house. I sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the dimly lit windows. I could hear the faint hum of the television through the walls, the same sound that had always comforted me, a background noise to our routine life. But tonight, it felt like a warning. I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached for the handle, the door creaked open on its own, and I froze. Jamie was standing there, looking at me as if she'd been expecting me. She was calm, too calm, and that only made my blood boil. "Dave," she said, her voice soft, almost soothing. "I was hoping you'd come back. We need to talk." I didn't move, just stood there, staring at her, my mind a blur of rage, confusion, and fear. How much had she planned? How deep did her deceit run? "I know what you're up to, Jamie," I said, my voice rough. "And you're not getting away with it." Her eyes flickered for a second, and for the first time tonight, I saw a hint of uncertainty. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the mask of the manipulative woman I'd thought I knew so well. "You don't know anything," she said, stepping closer, her hand reaching for mine. "Please, just let me explain." I jerked my hand away, disgusted by her touch. "Explain? After everything you've done? You're working with someone I don't even know, and now you want me to listen to your lies again?" Her eyes hardened, and I saw something in them, something darker than I'd ever seen before. "You think you're the only one with secrets, Dave? You think I'm the only one lying? This has always been bigger than us. You've been a pawn in this game from the start." I swallowed hard, the words hitting me like a slap. "What game, Jamie? What the hell is going on?" She hesitated, her face flickering with something like guilt, but then she composed herself. "You wouldn't understand. I never wanted you to get hurt, but you made it impossible to stay in the dark." "You've been planning this all along," I said, more to myself than to her. "This affair, everything, it's all part of some bigger plan. I don't know what you're trying to achieve, but I'm done. I'm done with you, with your lies." Her lips twisted into a sad smile. "You think you can just walk away from me, from this life? I'm sorry, Dave, but it's not that simple." The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the tension between us. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, teetering on the edge of something that could consume me whole. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. "I've had enough of your games, Jamie," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done being your fool." She stepped back, her eyes widening. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of fear, real fear. But then she recovered, her mask of indifference back in place. "I never wanted it to end like this," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "But I did what I had to do. I'm sorry." The apology fell flat, meaningless. Everything she'd done to me, to us, didn't deserve a simple apology. It deserved more than that. And as I turned to leave, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay. I wasn't going to beg for answers that weren't mine to have. I was done. "I hope whatever you're chasing is worth it," I said over my shoulder. "But it's not worth losing yourself. And it's not worth losing me." As I stepped outside into the night, the finality of it hit me. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need anything from her. This was my chance to rebuild. I was free, free from the lies, free from the past. I didn't know what tomorrow held, but I knew it wouldn't have her in it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again.